All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for a second special hour of Weather Underground, the price of natural disasters. I'm Alex Wilson, and over the next hour, we're going to discuss all aspects of how this country can better withstand destructive weather. Is this the new norm? And if so, why are more and more people moving into harm's way? And most importantly, are we rebuilding from the rubble in a better, stronger, and more sustainable way? Over the next hour, we have a panel of experts to help us break down what some of the impacts these disasters can have, both financially and personally, and what steps we need to take moving forward to possibly better prepare. So joining us in studio is Rachel Minery, Senior Director of Randall Bain, Chairman of the National Faith Berry, Associate Project Manager for the National Fire Protection, our hurricane expert, former Director of our winter weather expert, who has more than a lot of brain power into this room to help discuss what we can do moving forward. And over just the past 2 months, a hurricane dumped record rainfall on Texas. Another left nearly all of Puerto Rico without electricity. Intense wildfires killed more than 40 people in California. Carl Parker takes a look at a few of the costliest disasters this year so far. And of course, the total costs of hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Maria are still being assessed at the time, but we have learned that more relief is on the way for the people of Puerto Rico. This week, the Senate passed a $36.5 billion aid package for disaster relief. That money will be used for rebuilding and to fund the federal flood relief program, bringing the total approved by Congress during this fall's hurricane season to more than $50 billion. So we talk about hurricanes, and it just seems like the cost keeps going up. We still have the problems. You know, we talk about old infrastructure like electricity grids, what we saw in Puerto Rico. So are the costs just going to keep going up with future events?
Well, I think it can be flooded, hit by inland winds, tornadoes. It isn't just a coastal.
You deal with different terms. You know, we talk about Harvey, where the homes that were flooded, we saw that far away from the coastal areas where you'd think the immediate problems would be.
With Vermont, yeah, you don't have to be on the coast.
You know, building these structures, you know, we want to build as strong as possible, but sometimes obviously these natural disasters bring what they can. You know, we saw Irma and all the just the damage and destruction besides the flooding. You know, Irma was really a wind event.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a great question. You know, you talk about now we're going to basically rebuild everything, but is there a cost-effective way to fortify these ahead of time? And that's the big balancing act.
Well, some things are affordable. There are some cost-effective ways to lessen damage.
Let's talk a little bit about these flood events, you know, in terms of hurricanes that are bringing these heavy rainfall events. What would, for an unaccustomed homeowner?
It's very catastrophic for them to see that type of rain, for that you don't have that damage.
Yeah, there are some key times when this sort of thing can be done, right? When you rebuild.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, we look at them, and really we want to equip these homeowners that the dry floodproofing and the flood vents is making people more aware of the risk that they're exposed to.
Yeah, building back better after a hurricane is a really good mindset to get into.
Great point. You know, awareness breeds the ability to really prepare. We've got much more to come. We're going to talk about Here alone, wildfires have burned more than 8.4 million acres, including hard-hit Montana. More than 1 million acres burned, far exceeding the 10-year average of 5.9 million acres. Extreme drought been one contributing factor to the wildfire conditions, and fires continue to burn into the west. Of course, Montana is our billion-dollar disaster. The more recent California wildfires not in that list, but we expect that one also to top $1 billion.
And I'll tell you, when we talked about this the other day, when we talk about these natural disasters and which ones you would not want to get caught in,
right.
Thing that pops up and develops and moves so rapidly, and where do you shelter in an event like that?
Absolutely. And Faith, you're with the National Fire Protection Agency.
Right.
We were talking in the break, you know, fires seem to be, I think to a lot of people now watching California, it's scary because you're not able to really forecast it like a hurricane. You know exactly what areas are going to be affected, but you are saying one of the things your organization does is help people pre-prepare to have a better chance to be able to get to a safe spot should a fire affect your area.
Right, there's a lot of simple.
There is one phrase we've been talking about a lot this week, but in these high-end events like in Santa Rosa, there is a conversation to be had, Tom, about.
Good point, because the analogy is the tornado warning. It's a very, very short-term, high-impact weather event, and the fire is on that same time scale to alert people if they don't have their
fire burns through.
Makes sense. So once again, awareness really coming into play. We're going to talk something else we're juggling. You know, how do we be sustainable? How do we be environmentally friendly while also still trying to build these resilient structures? And this is something that you're actually familiar with.
Yeah.
You mentioned that could this be the answer? Could a stronger yet sustainable material be the answer? You know, we talk about severe weather, and unfortunately, with you get a tornado and houses destroyed, and of course that adds up in cost.
Right. You know, when you think about the concept of sustainability, you may be rushing out in the midst of a storm just to find shelter, a community shelter, to be able to stay in place. But what we're finding now is that it's much more cost effective to even be able to retrofit, in addition to new construction, to be able to incorporate a safe room into your own home.
You know, one thing that seems to happen, though, is when something new is invented, it takes back to building better. I mean, when there is damage to a home, or when it's destroyed, or when you're remodeling, those, again, are opportunities to not build it back the exact same way, do it a little bit better, a little bit more resilient, maybe even disaster to occur again the same way.
Right. And most people don't live in singular hazard areas. Right. You know, in hurricane zones, you have wind exposure and flood. You have compounding effects. And